When Matt thought he'd found forever with Sarah, she blindsided him with a breakup and a plea to just be friends. But when he moves on with her best friend, Sarah's true colors unravel in a storm of jealousy and chaos. In Nashville's vibrant heart, Matt's calm strength turns her betrayal into a lesson she'll never forget. Will justice prevail without crossing the line? Matt Harper pushed through the swinging doors of his restaurant, the Gulch Fire Pit, as the last notes of a local band's set echoed through Nashville's vibrant night. At 30, he'd built a reputation as the kind of manager who could charm a cranky customer and rally his staff through a chaotic dinner rush. His life felt like it was hitting all the right beats. A thriving career, a tight-knit group of friends, and Sarah Bennett, the woman he'd been sharing his life with for 2 years. As he locked up at 9:30 p.m., his mind was already on getting home to Sarah, picturing their usual Thursday night routine, curling up on the couch with takeout and their favorite crime drama. Matt and Sarah had met at a friend's rooftop party in East Nashville, where their banter over a shared love of old-school country music sparked an instant connection. She was a 28-year-old graphic designer, quick-witted and ambitious, always sketching ideas for her next project. Within months, they were inseparable, moving into a small apartment together and weaving their lives into a comfortable rhythm. Matt would slip her favorite almond milk latte onto her desk when she worked late. She'd tuck handwritten notes into his work bag, little reminders of her affection. Their friends envied their easy chemistry, the way they'd trade playful jabs at bar trivia nights or plan future adventures over beers at the Rusty Spur. Lately, Sarah had been dropping hints about something more permanent. At a friend's wedding last month, she'd squeezed Matt's hand during the vows, whispering, "Ours will be better." They'd started a joint savings account for a house, dreaming of a backyard where they could host summer barbecues. Matt had even scouted a ring, a simple gold band with a single diamond, perfect for her understated style, at a local jeweler. Everything pointed to a future together, and Matt felt like he was on the cusp of something big. But when he stepped into their apartment that Thursday night, the air felt wrong, heavy with an unspoken tension. Sarah sat on the couch, 2 packed suitcases at her feet, her posture stiff and her eyes fixed on the floor. No greeting, no smile, just a silence that made Matt's stomach twist. He dropped his keys on the counter, forcing a light tone. "Hey, babe, going somewhere?" She looked up, her expression a mix of resolve and guilt. "Matt, we need to talk." Those words landed like a punch. He sat across from her, bracing himself as she launched into a speech that sounded rehearsed, like she'd been practicing it for days. "I've been thinking a lot," she said, her voice steady but distant. "I love you, but I feel like we're moving too fast. I need to figure out who I am outside of us. I think we should just be friends." Matt's mind reeled. 2 years of shared dreams, talks of kids, a house, a life together, dissolved in a single sentence. He leaned forward, searching her face for an explanation. "Friends? Sarah, we've been planning a future. What's going on?" She reached for his hand, but the gesture felt hollow. "You're so important to me, Matt. I don't want to lose you. I just need space to explore myself, to grow. But I want us to stay close, you know? Like really good friends." The words hit harder than the breakup itself. She wasn't just leaving. She wanted to keep him on a leash, an emotional fallback while she explored. He noticed the suitcases again, their zippers taut, and a detail she'd let slip earlier clicked into place. "I'm staying with Emily for a while," she'd said. Emily, her best friend, the yoga instructor who'd always been a steady presence in their circle. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. Sarah had planned her exit, discussed it with Emily, and packed up without so much as a hint to him. The betrayal stung worse than her words. Matt's instinct was to argue, to demand answers, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the calculated way she'd laid out her plan, or the way she assumed he'd just agreed to her terms. Instead, a calm clarity settled over him. If she wanted to rewrite their story, he'd play by her rules, but on his terms. "Okay, Sarah," he said, his voice even. "If you want to be friends, let's be friends. Nothing more, nothing less." Her eyes widened, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. She'd clearly expected a fight, maybe tears or a plea to stay. Instead, Matt stood, gesturing to the door. "You've got a place to stay, right? Let me know if you need help with the bags." She hesitated, searching his face for a crack in his resolve. "Really? You're okay with this?" "Friends support each other's choices," he said, holding her gaze. "I support yours. Safe travels." The uncertainty in her expression was almost satisfying. She'd walked in expecting to control the narrative, but Matt's response had thrown her off script. As she dragged her suitcases out, muttering about catching up soon, Matt locked the door behind her and called a locksmith. By morning, the apartment was his alone, and he'd already canceled their shared Netflix, Spotify, and grocery accounts. When Sarah texted him at 7 a.m., asking for the Wi-Fi password, he replied with the internet company's customer service number. "You can set up your own account now," he wrote, keeping it polite but firm. Friends didn't share Wi-Fi. The next few days tested his resolve. Sarah kept reaching out, expecting the same emotional intimacy they'd shared as a couple. She'd text at midnight about a tough day, call to check in during his lunch breaks, even show up at the Rusty Spur unannounced with a bag of tacos, acting like nothing had changed. "Thought we could hang out," she'd say, holding up the food with a hopeful smile. Matt stayed friendly but distant, suggesting coffee meetups instead of cozy nights in. "Gotta run the dinner shift," he'd say, or "let's plan something for next week." Each time, her smile faltered, her confusion growing as he treated her like any other friend. No special treatment, no blurred lines. What Sarah didn't realize was that Matt was already moving forward. At a group hangout a week later, he caught Emily watching him from across the bar. She'd seen how he handled Sarah's exit with grace, refusing to play the heartbroken ex. When Sarah stepped away to flirt loudly with Ryan, a music producer she'd just started seeing, Emily slid into the seat next to Matt. "You're handling this better than most," she said, her tone warm but direct. "Sarah's acting like she can have it all, freedom and you on speed dial. It's not fair." Matt shrugged, sipping his beer. "She wanted friends. I'm giving her exactly that." Emily's laugh was genuine, and for the first time, Matt noticed the ease of talking to her. No drama, no games. As Sarah paraded Ryan around, glancing at Matt for a reaction, he realized something else. The life he'd built with Sarah was gone, but maybe that wasn't the end of his story. It was just the beginning. Matt Harper leaned against the bar at the Rusty Spur, the hum of Nashville's Friday night crowd filling the air with laughter and clinking glasses. It had been 2 weeks since Sarah Bennett had walked out of their shared apartment, suitcases in tow, demanding they just be friends. Matt had agreed, but on his terms, strict boundaries, no blurred lines. He'd changed the locks, canceled their shared accounts, and treated her like any casual acquaintance. It was a deliberate choice, one that kept him grounded as he navigated the fallout of their 2-year relationship. Sarah, however, seemed determined to test his resolve. She'd been texting him daily, dropping by unannounced with takeout or casual invites to hang out like nothing had changed. Each time, Matt deflected with polite detachment. When she showed up at his restaurant, the Gulch Fire Pit, with a coffee and a smile, expecting to chat during his break, he'd said, "Busy shift today, but let's grab coffee next week." Her confused glances told him she hadn't anticipated this version of friendship, one without the emotional intimacy she'd clearly expected to keep. Tonight, at their usual group hangout, Sarah upped the ante. She arrived with Ryan Miller, a 26-year-old music producer with a flashy smile and a knack for name-dropping. She made a show of it, laughing loudly at his stories, touching his arm, and glancing at Matt to gauge his reaction. The display was so blatant it almost felt scripted, like she was performing for an audience of one. Matt, unfazed, chatted with friends about the Predators' latest game, bought his own drinks, and kept his distance. If Sarah wanted to play the happy ex, he wasn't going to give her the drama she seemed to crave. Across the bar, Emily Carter watched the scene unfold. Sarah's best friend, a 29-year-old yoga instructor, had always been a steady presence in their circle, calm, direct, and fiercely independent. She'd been the one Sarah had turned to when planning her exit, yet Emily seemed increasingly uncomfortable with her friend's behavior. As Sarah leaned into Ryan, giggling at a joke that didn't land, Emily caught Matt's eye and shook her head slightly, a silent acknowledgement of the absurdity. When Sarah and Ryan stepped outside for a smoke, Emily slid into the seat next to Matt. "She's trying way too hard," she said, her voice low but amused. "I don't know what she expected, but you're not giving her the reaction she wants." Matt shrugged, sipping his beer. "She said friends. I'm keeping it friendly. No more, no less." Emily's laugh was warm, unguarded. "Most guys would be causing a scene or begging her to come back. You're just normal. It's kind of impressive." The compliment caught him off guard, but it felt good. Emily wasn't playing games or fishing for attention. She was just honest. They talked for a while, trading stories about work and their favorite hiking spots outside Nashville. Matt found himself noticing how easy it was to talk to her, how she listened without turning the conversation into a performance. For the first time since Sarah left, he felt a spark of something new. Over the next week, Sarah's attempts to blur boundaries intensified. She texted him at 1 a.m., venting about a work deadline, expecting him to play the supportive ex. Matt replied the next morning with a curt, "Sounds rough. Maybe talk to Ryan or a coworker." When she showed up at the fire pit during a packed dinner rush, claiming she just wanted to say hi, Matt nodded politely and said, "Appreciate it, but I'm slammed. Text me later to plan coffee." Her frustration was palpable, her smile tightening as he refused to bend. The tipping point came at another group hangout at the Rusty Spur. Sarah arrived late, Ryan in tow, and made a beeline from Matt's table. "Missed you at the last one," she said, her tone overly sweet as she slid into the booth across from him. Ryan hovered awkwardly, clearly unsure of his role on her display. She launched into a story about a client project, leaning toward Matt like they were still a couple, ignoring Ryan's growing discomfort. Matt kept his responses short, friendly but distant, and excused himself to grab another round for the group. As he waited at the bar, Emily joined him. "She's not getting it, is she?" she said, glancing back at Sarah, who was now laughing loudly at something Ryan hadn't said. "She wants you to chase her, to be jealous or something. It's like she didn't think through what friends actually means." Matt nodded, a wry smile tugging at his lips. "She wanted freedom and a safety net. I'm not playing that game." Emily's eyes held his for a moment, something unspoken passing between them. "Good for you," she said. "You deserve better than being someone's backup plan." The conversation shifted to lighter topics, her yoga classes, his crazy restaurant stories, but the connection lingered. Matt realized he was looking forward to seeing Emily, not just as Sarah's friend, but as someone he genuinely liked. She was straightforward, confident, and didn't thrive on drama, a stark contrast to Sarah's calculated chaos. The next day, Sarah's behavior took a darker turn. She called the fire pit during a lunch rush, telling Matt's assistant manager that he was having a personal crisis and shouldn't be left alone with customers. The manager, confused but concerned, pulled Matt aside to check on him. "Everything okay, man?" Some woman called saying you're not yourself. Matt's jaw tightened as he explained the situation, embarrassed but firm. He texted Sarah afterward, "Don't call my work. If you need to talk, schedule it like friends do." Her reply was a flurry of apologies, but he could sense her irritation at being called out. Emily, meanwhile, started showing up more often, not to meddle, but because she genuinely enjoyed Matt's company. They grabbed coffee one afternoon, talking for hours about their goals and shared love for Nashville's music scene. She told him about her dream to open her own yoga studio. He shared his plans to expand the fire pit. There was no pretense, no hidden agenda, just two people connecting. When Sarah got wind of their coffee meetup through a mutual friend, her text to Matt turned sharp. "Didn't know you and Emily were so close now," she wrote, the subtext dripping with accusation. Matt didn't take the bait, replying simply, "Yeah, she's cool. We're just hanging out." By the end of the month, the lines were drawn. Sarah's attempts to keep Matt in her orbit were failing, and her frustration was starting to show cracks in her carefully curated image. She'd parade Ryan around, but her eyes were always on Matt, waiting for a reaction he refused to give. Meanwhile, Emily's presence was becoming a bright spot in his life, a reminder that he didn't have to settle for half-hearted friendships or manipulative exes. But as Matt and Emily grew closer, Sarah's behavior was about to take a turn no one saw coming, setting the stage for a confrontation that would change everything. Matt Harper stood behind the counter at the Gulch fire pit, checking inventory as the lunch rush slowed. It had been a month since Sarah Bennett ended their 2-year relationship, insisting they remain just friends. Matt had agreed, but set clear boundaries, treating her with the same casual courtesy he'd give any acquaintance. He'd rebuffed her attempts to blur lines, late-night texts, unannounced visits, and overly familiar gestures, keeping their interactions strictly platonic. Sarah's frustration was mounting, her attempts to pull him back into her orbit growing more desperate. Her latest tactic was Ryan Miller, the 26-year-old music producer she'd been dating. At every group hangout at the Rusty Spur, she flaunted him like a trophy, laughing too loudly at his jokes and shooting glances at Matt to see if he'd crack. Matt stayed unfazed, chatting with friends, and splitting bills like he would with anyone else. He wasn't playing her game, and it was driving her up the wall. Meanwhile, his connection with Emily Carter, Sarah's best friend and a 29-year-old yoga instructor, was deepening. Their coffee meetups had turned into regular hangouts, filled with easy conversations about life and shared interests. Emily's straightforward honesty was a stark contrast to Sarah's calculated moves, and Matt felt a pull towards something real. The shift in dynamics didn't go unnoticed. Sarah's texts grew sharper, laced with passive-aggressive jabs about Matt, moving on too fast. When she learned he'd grabbed dinner with Emily, she called him late one night, her voice tight. "So, you're just replacing me with my best friend?" Matt kept his tone even. "We're friends, Sarah, like you wanted. Emily's free to hang out with whoever she wants, just like you're with Ryan." The silence on her end spoke volumes. She hadn't expected him to hold his ground so firmly. Things escalated at a Friday night gathering at the Rusty Spur. Sarah arrived with Ryan, her arm looped through his, her smile forced. She made a point of sitting across from Matt, launching into exaggerated stories about her and Ryan's amazing dates. Ryan, visibly uncomfortable, barely contributed, his eyes darting to the exit. Matt ignored the performance, talking sports with a buddy instead. Emily, sitting nearby, caught Matt's eye and mouth. "She's ridiculous." They shared a quiet laugh, a moment Sarah didn't miss. Her expression hardened, and she doubled down, leaning into Ryan with a loud giggle. Later that night, Emily pulled Matt aside at the bar. "She's spiraling," she said, her voice low. "She keeps texting me, saying you're being cold and that I'm betraying her by talking to you. I've known her for years, but it's like she's obsessed with controlling you." Matt nodded, unsurprised. "She wanted me on a leash. I'm not biting." Emily's smile was warm, approving. "You're handling this better than I would. Just watch her back. She's not taking this well." Emily's warning proved prophetic. The next week, Sarah's behavior crossed into dangerous territory. She called the fire pit during a packed dinner service, telling Matt's sous chef he was having a mental breakdown and shouldn't be managing. The sous chef, alarmed, relayed the message mid-shift, forcing Matt to explain the situation while juggling orders. He texted Sarah, his patience thinning. "Stop calling my work. This isn't okay." Her response was a flurry of apologies, but the damage was done. His staff started whispering, and Matt had to reassure his boss he was fine, a humiliating necessity. Then came the breaking point. Emily was leading a yoga class at her studio in East Nashville when Sarah stormed in, mid-session, her voice cutting through the calm. "We need to talk, Emily. Now." Emily, mid-pose with a dozen clients, explained she was working and offered to talk later. Sarah didn't budge. "You're a fake friend," she shouted, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You stole my life, my boyfriend, everything." Before Emily could respond, Sarah grabbed a rack of yoga blocks and shoved it over, sending equipment crashing across the floor. Clients gasped, some pulling out phones to record. Emily, shaken but composed, asked a staff member to call security while ushering Sarah toward the door. Sarah kept yelling, calling Emily names and accusing her of seducing Matt, until security escorted her out. Emily called Matt that evening, her voice unsteady. "She completely lost it, Matt. I've never seen her like this. She scared my clients, my staff, everyone. I don't know what she's capable of anymore." Matt drove to the studio, his jaw tight, as Emily recounted the incident. A client had posted a video online, and it was already spreading among their circle. Mutual friends texted Matt, shocked, asking if Sarah was okay. He realized this wasn't just drama. It was harassment, and it was escalating. Matt's brother-in-law, Jake, a detective with Nashville PD, met them at a coffee shop the next morning. Over black coffee, he listened as Matt and Emily laid out everything. Sarah's calls to Matt's workplace, her manipulative texts, and now the studio outburst. Jake's face was grim. "This isn't just an ex acting out. She's targeting you both, and that stunt at the studio could be criminal harassment. You need to document everything, texts, calls, witnesses, and you need to consider restraining orders." Matt hesitated, not wanting to escalate further, but Emily nodded. "She's not stopping, Matt. We can't let her keep doing this." They spent the afternoon with Jake, filing reports and gathering evidence. Emily's co-workers provided statements about the studio incident, and Matt pulled phone records showing Sarah's relentless calls and texts. As they left the station, Emily squeezed Matt's hand. "I'm sorry you're dealing with this," she said. but I'm glad we're in it together. Matt felt a rush of gratitude. Emily wasn't just a friend. She was becoming something more, someone he could trust in a way he never had with Sarah. Sarah, meanwhile, was unraveling. She texted Matt the next day, acting as if nothing had happened, suggesting they grab drinks to clear the air. Matt didn't respond. When she showed up at the fire pit that evening, claiming she'd forgotten something in the staff room, Matt had security turn her away. Her face twisted with anger as she left, but Matt felt a strange sense of relief. He was done playing her games. As Matt and Emily grew closer, their bond a quiet anchor amid the chaos, Sarah's actions were about to push everyone to a breaking point. Her obsession with controlling the narrative was backfiring, and the consequences of her outburst were closing in, setting the stage for a reckoning no one could ignore. Matt Harper sat in a quiet corner in a Nashville coffee shop, his laptop open to a spreadsheet of restaurant orders, but his mind was elsewhere. 6 weeks had passed since Sarah Bennett, his ex of 2 years, had stormed out of their shared life, demanding they remain just friends. Matt had held firm, treating her with the detached courtesy of an acquaintance, refusing to be her emotional crutch. Her frustration had escalated into harassment, culminating in a public outburst at Emily Carter's yoga studio, where she'd knocked over equipment and screamed accusations in front of clients. Now, with restraining orders filed and evidence mounting, Matt and Emily were bracing for the fallout. Sarah's behavior had only gotten worse since the studio incident. She'd started showing up outside Matt's restaurant, the Gulch Fire Pit, lingering in the parking lot during his shifts. One evening, she tried to slip into the kitchen, claiming she needed to talk to Matt about something urgent. The staff, already wary after her earlier calls about his mental breakdown, turned her away. She left shouting about being disrespected, her voice echoing through the dining area until security escorted her out. Customers stared, and Matt had to smooth things over with a free round of appetizers, his face burning with embarrassment. Emily wasn't spared either. Sarah began appearing at her yoga studio's parking lot, sitting in her car and staring as Emily locked up after classes. Once, she followed Emily to a nearby diner, snapping photos from a corner booth and texting them to mutual friend with captions like, "Guess who's moving on?" Emily, shaken but resolute, saved every text and reported each incident to Jake, Matt's brother-in-law and a Nashville PD detective. Jake was methodical, compiling a file with witness statements, security footage from the studio, and phone records showing Sarah's relentless contact. The tipping point came when Sarah called Emily's studio during a busy morning class, posing as a concerned client and claiming Emily was unprofessional for stealing her friend's boyfriend. The studio manager, recognizing Sarah's voice from the outburst, hung up and alerted Emily. That same day, Sarah showed up at the fire pit again, this time slipping past the hostess to confront Matt in the middle of a packed lunch service. "You're ruining my life," she yelled, loud enough to halt conversations at nearby tables. Matt, keeping his cool, signaled security to remove her while calmly explaining to customers it was a personal matter. His boss, fed up, warned him to get it under control or risk his position. That night, Matt and Emily met Jake at his precinct. He spread out the evidence on a table, screenshots of Sarah's texts, the studio's security video, and statements from Matt's staff. "This is enough for the restraining orders to stick," Jake said, his tone serious. "She's not just harassing you. She's targeting your livelihoods. The court will see that." They finalized the paperwork, requesting protection for both Matt and Emily. As they left, Emily squeezed Matt's arm. "I hate that we're here, but I'm glad we're doing this together." Matt nodded, feeling a quiet strength in their partnership, a stark contrast to Sarah's chaos. The restraining orders hit Sarah hard. Served at her temporary apartment, she called Matt in a panic, leaving voicemails begging him to talk this out like friends. When he didn't respond, she turned to their mutual friends, spinning tales of being betrayed by Matt and Emily. Some friends, swayed by her tears, texted Matt with cautious questions, but most saw through her. The viral video of her studio outburst had spread, and the truth was hard to deny. Sarah's credibility was crumbling, and her actions were catching up. Her job was the first casualty. Her marketing firm, already frustrated by her missed meetings and personal emergencies during her stalking episodes, fired her after she skipped a critical client presentation to follow Emily to a gym. Ryan, her boyfriend, had been pulling away, tired of her obsession with Matt. When he saw the studio video online, he stopped answering her calls entirely, leaving her isolated. With no job and no support, Sarah had to move back to her parents' house in Franklin, a 30-minute drive from Nashville's Pulse. Her mother, Susan, called Matt a week later, her voice heavy with shame. "I'm sorry for what she's done," she said. "I thought she was better than this. We're getting her help." Meanwhile, Matt and Emily's relationship grew stronger. Free from Sarah's shadow, they spent evenings exploring Nashville's music venues or cooking simple dinners together. Emily's calm presence grounded Matt, and their conversations about her dream to open a yoga studio, his plans to expand the fire pit, felt like building something real. One night, as they walked along the Cumberland River, Emily stopped to face him. "You didn't let her break you," she said. "That's why I'm here. You're real, Matt." He kissed her under the city lights, feeling a certainty he hadn't known with Sarah. Sarah's world, though, was imploding. Her friends, once torn by her sob stories, started distancing themselves as Jake's evidence, shared discreetly through the grapevine, revealed her manipulation. One friend, who'd initially sided with Sarah, texted Matt an apology. "I had no idea she was lying like that. I'm done." Sarah's attempts to regain control fell flat. Her calls to the fire pit were blocked, and Emily's studio banned her from the premises. The restraining orders barred her from contact, and any violation would mean jail time. As the court date for the orders approached, Jake warned them she might lash out before it's finalized. People like this don't go quietly. He was right. Sarah sent one last text to Matt, somehow slipping through a blocked number. "You'll regret this. We were supposed to be friends." Matt forwarded it to Jake, who added it to the file. The message felt like a final gasp, a sign that Sarah's grip on their lives was slipping. Matt and Emily, meanwhile, found peace in their routine. They hosted a small game night with friends who'd stood by them, laughing over cards and beers. The absence of Sarah's drama was a relief, like a storm passing. Matt realized he'd been carrying her chaos for too long, and letting it go felt like freedom. But as the court date loomed, he knew the final chapter was coming, one where Sarah would face the consequences of her actions, and he and Emily would step fully into their future. Matt Harper stood outside a Nashville courthouse, the morning sun glinting off the Cumberland River in the distance. It had been 2 months since Sarah Bennett's chaotic exit from his life, her demand to just be friends unraveling into a campaign of harassment that targeted both him and Emily Carter, his new partner and Sarah's former best friend. The restraining orders filed against Sarah, backed by evidence of her workplace disruptions, stalking, and the explosive outburst at Emily's yoga studio, were set to be finalized today. Matt and Emily, hand in hand, were ready to close this chapter and move forward. The court hearing was swift but tense. Sarah sat across the room, her posture rigid, avoiding Matt's gaze. Jake, Matt's brother-in-law and a Nashville PD detective, had ensured their case was airtight. Security footage, witness statements, and a log of Sarah's relentless texts and calls painted a clear picture of harassment. The judge, unimpressed by Sarah's attempts to play the victim, granted the restraining orders, barring her from contacting Matt or Emily or approaching their workplaces. She was also ordered to attend mandatory therapy with Dr. Patricia Moore, a counselor known for handling obsessive behavior. As the gavel fell, Sarah's shoulders slumped, her face a mix of defiance and defeat. The consequences hit Sarah hard. Her marketing job was already gone, lost after she skipped work to stalk Matt and Emily. Ryan, her boyfriend, had vanished after her public meltdown, unwilling to be part of her drama. With no income and her social circle shrinking, Sarah had moved back to her parents' home in Franklin. Her mother, Susan, had reached out to Matt again, her voice heavy with regret. "She's in therapy now," Susan said over the phone. "Dr. Moore's working on her sense of entitlement, how she thought she could control you both while doing whatever she wanted. I'm ashamed it got this far." Matt appreciated the call, but kept it brief, focusing on his own life. That life was flourishing. Matt and Emily's relationship had deepened through the chaos, built on mutual respect and honesty. They'd moved in together a month ago, renting a small house in East Nashville with a backyard perfect for the barbecues they'd always talked about. Emily's yoga studio was thriving, her clients rallying around her after Sarah's outburst. Matt's restaurant, the Gulch Fire Pit, was busier than ever, his staff relieved to work without Sarah's disruptions. They hosted friends for casual dinners, laughing over shared stories and music, free from the tension Sarah once brought. One evening, as they grilled burgers for their crew, Emily leaned into Matt. "This is what I love," she said. "Us just being us. No games." Matt kissed her forehead, feeling a peace he hadn't known in years. Sarah's therapy, according to mutual friends, was starting to take hold. Dr. Moore had zeroed in on her inability to accept boundaries, challenging her belief that she deserved Matt's loyalty while pursuing her own freedom. "She's finally admitting she was wrong," a friend texted Matt, "but it's slow." Sarah had started dating someone new, a quiet accountant who seemed oblivious to her past. Matt hoped she'd be honest with him, but he kept his distance, letting the restraining orders do their job. The final piece fell into place on a crisp fall evening at the Rusty Spur, where Matt and Emily joined friends for drinks. It was the anniversary of their first real conversation, when Emily had praised Matt's handling of Sarah's breakup. After a round of toasts, Matt pulled Emily outside to the bar's patio, the city lights twinkling. He dropped to one knee, pulling out a simple silver ring he'd chosen for her, a new choice, untainted by his past with Sarah. "You're my home," he said. "Marry me?" Emily's yes was immediate, her laugh echoing as their friends cheered from inside. Sarah's mother sent a letter a week later, a formal apology. "Therapy's helping Sarah see she can't control people's choices," Susan wrote. "She's learning what friendship really means. Not ownership, but respect. Thank you for standing your ground." Matt tucked the letter away, feeling no anger, only closure. Sarah's actions had cost her dearly, her job, her relationships, her reputation, but they'd also freed him to find something better. When friends asked about the ordeal, Matt kept it simple. "Sarah's betrayal hurt, but it showed me what I deserve. Real love doesn't come with ultimatums." He and Emily were planning a small wedding, focused on their future, not the past. The house they dreamed of was becoming a reality, their savings account growing for a down payment. Their life was full: work, friends, quiet nights planning trips to the Smoky Mountains. Sarah's chaos had been a storm, but had passed, leaving Matt and Emily stronger. As they sat on their porch one night, Emily sipping tea and Matt strumming a guitar, he reflected on the journey. Sarah's demand for friendship had been a trap, a way to keep him tethered while she explored other options. By refusing to play along, he'd reclaimed his life. The restraining orders and therapy were Sarah's consequences, a moral reckoning that didn't require revenge, just accountability. Matt looked at Emily, her eyes catching the porch light as she smiled, and knew he'd found what Sarah could never offer: a partner who chose him, fully and honestly. The story closed with a lesson hard learned, but clear: love thrives on trust, not manipulation. Sarah's fall wasn't Matt's victory. It was her chance to grow, just as his choice to move forward had been his. As Nashville's skyline glowed in the distance, Matt played a soft chord, the music carrying a truth he'd carry forever. Sometimes, the best way to win is to let go and build something better.